In this video, I'm going to give you everything you need to know to master face-to-face sales. And we're going to do this over 2 videos. Here's part 1. Face-to-face sales involves going to meet people directly or having conversations on Teams or Zoom. But the key thing is you've got to make sure you put these 8 elements in place to ensure those conversations are successful. So if you want to be successful face-to-face sales, the first thing you've got to make sure you do is prepare effectively. If you start to be able to go into conversations, try and target anyone and everything, you're going to fail. So the first thing you need to think about when you engage in, who are you trying to target? Who are you trying to engage with? What is the characteristics of that audience? You should have an ideal customer profile. And if you're just trying to sell to anyone and anything and not showing who you're actually engaging with, you're going to fail. Know who it is that you're targeting first and foremost. Point number 2 then is if you do know your audience, you're also going to know what matters to them. What are the issues that are going on in their world? Face-to-face selling or online selling is the same way. You've got to understand the customer's problems and really what's driving their agenda right now. So firstly, when you know who they are and have built a target persona on what it is that they've got concerns around, you're going to be in a great position to at least then start the conversation off in the right way. So once you've understood who and what it is that they've got problems with, I also want you to start to think about why they should have that conversation with you. Why does it matter to them? Why is it such a concern that if they don't get these issues resolved, it's going to have a concern for their business or their personal life or whatever's going on? We need to be able to understand who they are, the ideal customer profile. We have to understand what are the problems and be ahead of the game on that. We also need to know why it's making an impact for them and why, if they don't get it solved, it's going to cause challenges. Those are the basis points for which to make sure that when we start to go meet people, we've got to give ourselves the best chance of success. So point number 2 when it comes to making sure you master face-to-face sales is your presentation. I'm not talking about the way in which you get your laptop out and start sharing slides that bore the hell out of someone. I'm talking about the way in which you present yourself. And this is applicable whether you're meeting someone face-to-face or online. The key thing initially is this. Look good. You've got 7 seconds to make a first impression. Don't waste it. If that impression doesn't go well initially, you're going to find it really hard to then build the rapport and engage a person over time. The key thing is look good, make them think, oh, I'm dealing with a professional here. So here's another point when it comes to engaging face to face, and this is less relevant for if you're on Teams, but definitely important if you're meeting someone face to face. You smell. The reality is, I've seen business people come into meetings with me that look basically terrible, but smell even worse. They've got BO and they've basically not brushed their teeth, or they've been out the night before. It just gives off a terrible impression. Be in a position where you look and smell great, you feel really good, and that's going to help you do the third thing, which is to be confident. The reality is, confidence of course is a challenge for us all in business, but when we look good and smell good, we generally tend to feel our best. We feel in a position to engage with people. But confidence is really key in that presentation. We want to be able to shake someone by the hand with a firm handshake that makes us think we're aware of ourselves, we know what we're doing, we're there to do business. We don't want to be like an arrogant person, but just someone that knows their place and knows what they're able to offer and add value to that meeting. It's going to set the impression off, and it's going to make that person think, initially, I'm engaging with someone here that can maybe help me. So now you look good and smell good and feel confident, the key thing is to build that initial rapport. Again, we want to get people on our side. We want to get people thinking, yeah, this is the person I like. Because remember, people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. So what's a great way to do that initially? Smile. I'm often told I don't smile enough myself, but it's something I generally try and do when I'm in meetings with clients. Have a smile, make that first engagement someone that thinks it's a positive one rather than looking dour and a bit dirty. So if you smile, it's going to make you feel good, and it's hopefully going to mean that the other person you're going to engage with is going to smile back at you, and it starts the conversation off in the right way. So point number 2 is something that a lot of people say, shouldn't do this. And it doesn't have to be done for ages and ages, but it is important that you start the conversation off in the right way. And that's a little bit of small talk. People say to me, I don't know what to say, James, or I don't know if it's right if I engage with someone in that respect. And I'm going to talk to you in a moment about making sure that you react accordingly to the type of person you're engaging with. But starting off the conversation with how's your morning been? Or if you're doing the meeting, have you had a good weekend? Or have you got good plans for the weekend? Or have you had to travel far? Or do you live locally to here? Or other questions like that can enable you to engage with someone and build up that little bit of rapport. It's a bit of small talk. It may last 2 or 3 minutes throughout the conversation. It's just just a way to engage and get to know them a bit more. And as we'll talk about in the next point in reacting, if you find that person's really engaging in that small talk, then we might want to carry that on. But the key thing is we do need to initially just have that initial conversation to make them feel, yeah, this is going to be a conversation I like, and ideally it should be open questions focused on them. What, how, who, what did you get up to, what have you got planned, what's happening at the moment, have you had a busy morning? Those type of questions can build that initial rapport and get you off to a good start. And the final point about rapport is listen. Over the course of this conversation, it's going to be a really critical thing when you're meeting someone face to face, is the ability to use your two ears and your one mouth in proportion. So many people in sales start talking and getting ready to open their gob. Don't. Use your ears more than your mouth. Listen to people, listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying, and we'll talk about that in the next point as well. But if you listen and then really start to focus on removing other distractions, turn your phone off, focus on that prospect or that customer at that time and place, then you're going to be in a better chance to have a good meeting with them and hopefully turn it into a piece of business that you can do together. So the fourth point, and this is a really critical one when it comes to mastering face-to-face sales, and it's the thing that a lot of people get really badly wrong, is the ability to react effectively. The first thing I'm going to tell you, and this is something that you need to be able to start looking at, is the type of person you're engaging with. The very best at selling are able to identify who they're talking to and the types of people. And I've done videos based around Thomas Erickson's book, Surrounded by Idiots, on the 4 different colours of people you'll get: reds, blues, greens and yellows. The reality is if you're engaging with a red and they're going to not really want to engage in too much small talk, they're going to want to get down to business quite quickly, which means you're going to need to react and follow in the same way. But if you get someone that's a yellow, for example, that's really enjoying the small talk and you're building a conversation, I'm not suggesting you want to stay and talk to them for 20 minutes around what they did at the weekend, but just be in a position to understand that reds will need less small talk than a yellow who will need that more relationship. They'll base their decision on business on the relationship you have with them. So just be in a position where you can react accordingly. If you're dealing with a blue, for example, who's maybe more of an engineer, an accountant's detail person, you might need to slow down a bit and make sure you're going into a more slower pace method in order to get the messages across. Whereas again, if you're dealing with a yellow, you might want to engage with someone in a bit more of a fast-paced environment. The key thing is to react to the type of person you're in conversation with, and you should be able to do that by meeting people and assessing the types of people of who they are. It's a great skill to have. It's one of the things that those that master face-to-face sales have got the ability to do, to react accordingly to the type of person they meet. So point number 2 is relating to reaction, comes down to body language. I see so many people in face-to-face sales environments who don't watch the body language that the other person's giving them. What I mean by body language, are they engaging? Are they defensive? Are they leaning back? Are they reacting? How are they engaging? I've got videos, and there's a link to a video on my body language video where you can literally look at the signs and signals that people are giving you off. But the key is how you react to those. If you see someone that's looking a bit disinterested and looking out the window, you carrying on talking is not going to be a way to make you do business with them and get them excited about what you have to offer, or even get them want to have a second conversation with you. The key thing is look at the body language that the people are giving off. What are the signals? Some of them, the common ones we know, like defensive. But what are the other signals that they're giving off that we should be aware of? For example, then maybe their facial gestures are giving something away. Make sure that you become an expert at understanding body language. There's a video I've put on there which I'll link to, but if you can know how to understand and then react accordingly, it's going to put you in a far better position to be able to get that deal done, or at least move that deal to the next stage. And the final point when it comes to reaction is your reaction to their tone. This is one of the most critical factors when it comes to be able to learn to sell and be able to be successful in sales, is the ability to read and understand the tonality that someone's giving off. So for example, what do I mean by tonality? It may well be that someone sort of gives you an answer which gives you an answer such as, yeah, I think that's okay, where you hearing in their voice that they're not sure about something. Really great salespeople that master face-to-face sales are able to pick up on that and say, hey, I sense that you weren't sure about something there. I could have got it wrong, but I sensed that that was still an issue for you. They're able to pick up on the tonality that people give off in their voice. Or if someone's really confident and assured about something, so for example, let's say they're talking about an issue that they might have and someone says, no, we don't have an issue with that. Great salespeople that master face-to-face selling are able to spot that and say, hey, no, I totally understand from your tone there that you've got that covered. Let's move on to the next point. They don't just probe in and then start to piss the other person off. Listen to tone, watch body language, and understand the type of person you're engaging with. If you can do this effectively, you're going to be in a far better position to then make sure that you can get the questions asked that you need and turn this potential into a bit of business. So the fifth point when it comes to mastering face-to-face sales is to make sure we're in a position to ask great questions. Now, the questions that you ask are so critical. I've done videos about how important this is, and I've talked at length about the different types of questions you can ask. But the reality is, if you want to be successful in face-to-face sales, or any sales for that matter, you've got to be in a position to ask open questions. I'd love to be able to have a great conversation today. What are the key things that we'd like to cover? Or what I'm seeing in the industry are this, this, and this. How's that affecting you? Or I'm talking to other people in the sector at the moment and they're struggling with this issue and this issue. How does that play out for you guys? The reality is, be able to ask those open questions, the how, the what, the who, the tell me more, are really critical ways in which you can start to then find out what's really going on in the mind of the buyer. If that's done in a way that makes them feel comfortable, which leads us on to point number 2, you're going to hopefully lead the conversation on to the next stage where we can then start to qualify them. So point number 2 though, when it comes back to questions, is very similar to how we react to people, but it's the way in which you ask the question. It's the tonality of your questions. So tone here, we were listening to the tone the other person was giving off, but the way in which you ask questions is really important. I use a video where I've said to people before, if I ask the question, what made you do that? There are 4 or 5 different ways in which I could give that answer. What made you do that? What made you do that? What made you do that? Different tonality that you give off in your voice will prompt a different reaction from the buyer, the person that you're speaking to. So learn how to modulate your tone. Adjust your tone from maybe being, hey, what's made you do that? Through to, what's made you do that? Or what's made you do that? Adjust your tone, practice, listen on your phone to how you ask questions, and you're going to find that your tonality will then start to fit to the audience you're engaging with. You're going to find you get a different reaction when you ask a question in a different way, and that's a critical factor when it comes to getting underneath the skin of the buyer and making sure we're in a position to really find out what's going on in their world to make them want to buy from you in the first place. And the final point around questions, right time. There is a right and wrong time to ask certain types of questions. I always tell people sales is like dating, and if I'm in a position where I start asking a new person I've met for the first time questions that are quite personal or quite deep into their company too early in the conversation, the barriers are going to go up, it's suddenly going to make the meeting more challenging, and I'm probably going to lose the opportunity. So learn when to start asking the right question at the right time. I start to think about questions, and in my I've got a download which you'll put access to, which I have 52 questions to ask. There are some questions I ask at the start of the conversation. I see it a bit like a meeting someone initially. There's some starter questions. I then have a bit more of an intermediate set of questions, and then have some more detailed questions, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the conversation, where we've built up some rapport and we've felt like there's a connection there. The reality is, if you ask the right questions in the right way at the right time, you're going to be in a great position to really then start to find out what's going on with this person, see what their challenges are, see what their desires are, see what's making them want to have a meeting with you and even look at doing business, and it's going to enable us to hopefully turn that first meeting into a piece of business. So if you've built up the ability to ask great questions, the key point when it comes to then mastering face-to-face sales is also maximizing the time that you have with someone. And the best way to do that, whether it's in the first meeting, especially engaging with someone, is to start to get an initial qualification. Are they showing the signals or the elements that make you think this could be an opportunity? Sometimes we go and have sales conversations, it just doesn't go anywhere, and that's okay. The reality is, we've got to be able to have our antennas on to be able to qualify people effectively. Now, I've got a video on BANT, which I'll put a link to here. And my BANT video is some questions you can ask, which are a fantastic series of questions to ask around the budget and the authority and the time process that people are working with. But I'd like to think about the qualification process here in 3 simple ways. Point number this is, why buy? The reality is, in sales, we've got to be able to understand the deeper elements that go on behind the buyer's mind. So my question to you is, why are they having to buy? If you can't get under the skin, under the surface of really what's making them want to solve something or to want to buy something, then you're going to struggle to engage with people. Your prospects, your buyers are like an onion. They have layers to them. And if you've asked the right questions and probed into those conversations, we can try and find out what's really driving them to want to buy something in the first place. And that's something we want to be able to qualify, because if they haven't got a deep desire to do it, the chances are you're going to waste your time and the meeting's not going to go anywhere. So point number 2 when it comes to qualifying is why us? The reality is this: we're probably not at this stage of the sales conversation. I'm going to cover that in part 2. I'm going to start to get into who we are and what we do. This first meeting should always be about the buyer and what their situation is. But we want to try and get an understanding of what it is they know about us. They've given you time in a meeting, so maybe they've not heard anything about you at all. Or maybe they've seen some of your social media content, or maybe they've seen details of what it is you've done. We want to try and understand what it is they know about us and try and find out why us. Why have we been brought into this conversation? Asking questions such as, what made you keen to have a meeting with us today? Or what is it about what we do that could be of interest to you? Is a great way to find out what they know about you. It's a signal to indicate, are they just bringing you in to try and make numbers up, or do they know something about you and what you've done? So ask that question, not just about why they're going to buy, but why us? And the third point when it comes to qualifying is why now? The reality is, why now? What's making this issue or problem or desire that they've got such a pressing thing for them at the moment? Why couldn't it, what would be the implications if this just carried on for the next 6 months? We've got to be able to understand what's driving that agenda. And the key thing, as I'll talk about in part 2, is there's always an underlying agenda. There's always something going on in the mind of the buyer that's driving them to do something at that time period. And our job is to qualify that. It may well be that they're just maybe looking around and they're not looking to make a decision for the next 12 months. In which case, that's fine, but it means that we maybe then don't have a meeting with them for a couple of months and don't waste our time initially. Or it may well be that they've got a deadline they've got to hit and they've got to get something done within the next 6 weeks and there's an opportunity to do business tomorrow. I don't know. The key thing is trying to find out why now, and that comes from the questions that we ask in the right way at the right time. Qualification is essential. If you learn to qualify, what you can also then start to do is, if you know who your audience is and who you're a perfect fit for, you can then start to be in a position where we move it to the next phase, where we can then start to say, great, I've got other people that have been in a similar position to you that I've worked with already. They've had these problems and we've helped solve them. Let's look at how we can talk about that in a future conversation. The key thing is qualify. Make sure that you don't waste your time chasing rabbits that aren't going to go anywhere. So point number 7, when it comes to making sure that we make these first meetings and these conversations go really well when it comes to meeting someone face to face, is to be able to summarize. The key thing we've got to be able to do is understand, what have you heard? I always encourage the people I work with to make sure you break through at the end of a conversation, and you should have maybe set the agenda and time frame for it, to summarize what you've heard. Really enjoyed meeting you today, Paula. What I've heard from our conversation is this, 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 and this. Have I missed anything? Have I summarized that correctly? Outline what you've heard. It does 2 things. A, it shows the buyer that you've understood and you've understood their situation, that you've listened. And by the way, you should always be writing those things down in a book. But it also be in a position where we can get them to do the second thing, which is really key, which is to ownership of their position and their situation. When I've engaged with someone and said, what I've heard from our conversation is this, 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 and this, have I summarized that correctly? Yes, that's exactly where I'm at. When the buyer starts to own their position, and whether that's done in a way face-to-face or online, it helps us move things forward. It basically indicates to them that they know they've got this issue and they're taking it on board and responsibility for then trying to solve it. The key thing is what you've heard, summarize it, note down the key points, and if you have missed anything, they might have said, oh, actually, I wanted to cover this, this, and this. It means you can then note that down as being a really critical point that they thought is really vital for them in the sales process. So note down what you've heard and get them to own it. Yeah, this is actually what I'm hearing. And the final point around here, when it comes to summarize, is spot their desire. When you actually give them the ability to own that situation, you should be looking ideally for some form of commitment or energy or drive from the person that, yeah, this is the issue that we've got. And yeah, and it's something that we really want to get resolved, or we're really looking to move this forward, or we're really in a position where we want to change this. You're looking for that indication. We're looking to, again, be able to look out for their tone and their body language to really understand what's driving them. Why is that important? Because if it's it's a nice to have, it's a nice thing to do, generally it could mean you're going to waste lots and lots of time chasing opportunities that aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. we're looking out for those elements. I'd always ask a question at the end of here, such as, we've mentioned these issues and what would you like to do next? What would help you? What would be the key things you'd like to do that would move this forward? Or how can we move forward and try and build a plan to solve this? Or how would it feel to put a plan in place to solve this? This would be great. I'm interested to look at doing this. Great, and then we can then move on to the next steps. But the reality is, understand what's driving their desire. I always try and measure it on a scale of 3. Are they cold, are they lukewarm or hot? Ideally, we're looking for the lukewarm and the hots here so we can move the conversation on to the next step. So the 8th point that's critical when it comes to mastering face-to-face sales is actually the next steps. The question I want to be able to say to you is, what's going to happen next? You shouldn't have a meeting or leave a meeting with someone without there being a complete clarity on the next steps. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, Darren. What I'd like to be able to do is, hopefully it's been useful for you, why don't we set up a conversation for tomorrow, 2 weeks time, a month's time, whatever it is, and put some next dates and time in the diary, and what I'll then look to be able to then do is complete that information and provide that back to you. Get clarity. If you leave a sales meeting with someone in an environment where there's nothing, where it's completely up to them or you're not sure what's going to happen next, it generally tends to go nowhere. Every sales opportunity you should have a next step, and it should be defined and be clear about what that is. And if it is clear and if it has been defined, then what you also want that person to do is to confirm it. The reality is, if you've outlined the next steps but they haven't confirmed it back to you, then you've got a potential issue and challenge there. So what would I be looking to do? How does that feel? Looking to have a meeting next Thursday at 2. Yeah, I'll have a think about it. If that's the reaction I'm getting back from someone and I think it's worked well but they haven't, then I'd be having my warning signals on. I want them to say, yes, next Tuesday works for me, I can do that. I'd then be looking to send a diary invitation across there and then, or maybe certainly as a follow-up afterwards, and make sure it's become confirmed to have the next steps at that point in time and that they've confirmed it, that they're committed to doing this. Don't leave a meeting without knowing what's going to happen next and getting that person's confirmation. And if they won't give you the confirmation, if they're saying, oh, I'll have a little think about it, it should send warning signals to you. It should send signals that the meeting isn't maybe going as well as you want it to. And maybe I'd finish off with something like, sounds like this isn't a priority for you right now, or I don't want to become a pain. I thought a meeting would be the next steps. What do you think? The key thing is get confirmation from the buyer this is what they want to do. It's going to help us move the conversation forward and try and get that business done. And my final point when it comes to next steps, and this is a real little bonus one that I like to add in, is to talk about barriers. So let's just say we've confirmed that the meeting's gone well, we've asked lots of questions, we've understood the pain points of the audience, and we've got a qualification that they are keen to do something, there's a driver to make it happen, and that they've owned that position and told us why it's going to be in place. Once I've got those meetings in place, I might just ask you a question at the end. Look, I'm really excited to move the conversation forward, but I just want to understand, tell me what could be the barriers that could make us, this deal not happen? Or what could be some of the barriers that could, stop this from moving forward in the way we both like? By getting out those barriers, what you often find, especially if you haven't asked all of the questions in the right place at qualification, is what could be things that get in the way. Sometimes, for example, I've had people that say to me, oh, I might need to discuss this with my shareholders, or I might need to discuss this with someone else, or I've got a consultant that I bring into the business, I'd like to discuss this with that person. We're looking for barriers, or there could well be a budget decision that's coming down the line in the next few months, so we're not sure about what's going to happen there. Try and identify, once you've built that rapport and you've built the engagement, what barriers could get in the way from making something happen. And you can be honest back to them and say about the things that could stop you from working with them, if there's a barrier that you think as well. Here are some of the things to be aware of that we've got to take into account as well when it comes to working with other people. But make sure you try and identify what those barriers are, so at least we can then handle them or be in a position where we then don't chase the next stage of the opportunity. So there you have it. There are the 8 points. I'm going to put chapters in place so you've got records of knowing what to do at each individual stage. And if you download this video ahead of the next video that I release, then you're going to be in a position for your next sales meeting to know what to do and when to do it. The key thing is also, if you want to make sure you get part 2 of this, subscribe to the channel, make sure that you hit that notification button, and you'll be notified when part 2 comes out, which is enabling us to turn this potential first meeting into a piece of business that we can do so we can get that deal done and make us all smile. Thanks for watching the video. My name's James White. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, stay tuned for part 2. Follow the 8 steps. Let's get you getting great sales results and mastering face-to-face sales.